Fiqh is quite heavy and it's quite detailed and it's quite precise understanding of the religion, but they would not leave the millah, they would not stop being a Muslim. Whereas, for example, if someone was to say to you, Salat al-Isha is not part of Islam, they become a kafir. It's a prayer for the people of the Qur'an. And like I said, the virtue of Salat al-Witr is not disputed. The woman and the man in general in Islam are given the same rulings and obligations in general. However, there might be certain areas where there are exceptions. There's no longer a fear that if everyone prays Salat al-Tarawih together, that people are going to think it's fard like Salat al-Fajr or Salat al-Maghrib or Salat al-Isha. Who is the most learned? Who is afqah? Who possesses the most knowledge of fiqh? And this is the person who prays. Because now another condition in terms of shortening the prayer is that if your safar is shorter, you can shorten your prayer. And the idea is that Salatul Jum'ah is a time to bring the ummah together. It's like Salatul Tarawih. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على حبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. حياكم الله. Welcome everyone to what might be, if I can manage it, our final session on Fiqh Salah. I will try and I will endeavor. We make progress, and also it means that people they don't get as bored, inshallah, because we're changing the discussions. Not that we should ever get bored of talking about Salah, but you know, fiqh is quite heavy and it's quite detailed and it's quite precise. فبإذن الله تعالى, as much as we're able, perhaps we'll try to discuss other topics as well. بإذن الله الكريم. But we have several topics today that are of immense importance, but they're varied. So it's going to require a little bit of attention and concentration and consistency, inshallah, to be able to keep our focus and to understand as we jump from topic to topic. Because today we're going to look at the special salawat, if that's the way that we want to describe them. The salawat which are not the 5 salawat, inshallah. Some of the, we'll talk a little bit about the Sunan, inshallah. We'll talk a little bit about Salat al-Tarawih, مثلا, about Salat al-Eidain, where other things as well. So let us start off with perhaps in the Hanafi madhhab, the most important of the extra salawat, or the special salawat, if we'd like to give them this term. And that is, would anyone like to guess? It shouldn't be difficult. Who said that? Witr. Yes, exactly, precisely, correct. Well done, mashallah. The Hanafis hold that Salat al-Witr, this night prayer, which is performed every night, is wajib. Can anyone remember what the difference between fard and wajib is? Yes.
If you don't believe you have to do something wajib, you're still a Muslim, but if you don't believe you have to do something fard, you're not.
MashaAllah, what's your name?
Abdullah.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Very good answer. So we talked about how the Hanafis, they have one extra category than the rest of the other madhhab. They have fard, wajib, mustahab or mandub, mubah, makruh and haram. They have 6. They have obligatory or fard, yani necessary or obligatory, wajib, which is a level below that in terms of obligation. They have what is likable or good to do, mustahab. They have mubah, which is permissible. They have makruh, what is disliked, and they have haram, which is prohibited. So in the Hanafi madhhab, the wajib is what is proved by an evidence that is not as strong as the evidence that proves the fard, salah. Okay, for example, or the fara'id, in this case the fard salah. So disbelieving in it will not make you a kafir, but you still have to perform it. So in the Hanafi madhhab, for example, witr, if you were not to perform witr one night, you would have to do qada. You would have to actually repeat you'd have to perform your witr prayer. It does not fall off you. Okay. However, disbelieving, if someone said, witr is not part of the religion, it'd be a terrible thing. It'd be a major sin. It'd be a khalal. It would be a deficiency in their understanding of the religion. But they would not leave the millah. They would not stop being a Muslim. Whereas, for example, if someone was to say to you, Salat al-Isha is not part of Islam, they become a kafir. Right? So this is a major difference. Another important area of difference is how the witr salah is performed in the Hanafi madhhab. So the witr salah in the Hanafi madhhab is performed in 3 rak'ahs minimum, according to Abu Hanifa. These 3 rak'ahs are done with 2 sittings. So in this regard, it is similar to Salat al-Maghrib. And there is a dua done before the final ruku'. So before you even go into the bowing in the final third rak'ah, you do the qunut, you do the dua in the salah. From the evidences that could be used to support the Hanafi madhab's position is actually a hadith that's mentioned in Musnad Imam Ahmad, where it is narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, indeed Allah has increased the prayer for you, it is the witr prayer, so pray it between the Isha and the Fajr prayers. For this idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has increased a salah for you indicates its obligation or it's the necessity of performing it. Right? And there's other things, there are many virtues to the performing of witr. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is witr, is singular, and loves the witr, the odd-numbered prayer. So perform the witr prayer, O people of the Qur'an. For the witr prayer is a prayer for the people of the Qur'an, as it comes in the hadith that is narrated by Imam al-Tirmidhi. So it's a prayer that is a prayer for the people of the Qur'an. And like I said, the virtue of Salat al-Witr is not disputed. It is not something that is disputed. However, we're now discussing what is the evidence to suggest that Salat al-Witr is obligatory, is wajib, because this is an opinion that the Hanafis have, and these two pieces of evidence, these two ahadith would indicate that it is wajib, it is necessary to perform. Then we move on, inshallah, to the discussions of other sunan, because we didn't actually complete our discussion with regards to the actual Sunnah salawat that you perform with your obligatory or fara'id. Okay, so these are, and I'll put them out into the group chat inshallah for sake of memory, but two rak'ahs before Salat al-Fajr. Then you have 2 rak'ahs after Dhuhr, 4 rak'ahs before Dhuhr and Salat al-Jum'ah, 2 rak'ahs after Salat al-Dhuhr and after al-Maghrib, and also after Salat al-Isha. These are the sunan mu'akkada. These are the very important sunan salawat to perform. Also, another thing that was on our agenda to discuss, which I think is of immense importance, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, as I pull up my notes, inshallah, is with regards to how does the woman pray differently to the man. Tamam? The woman and the man in general in Islam are given the same rulings and obligations in general. However, there might be certain areas where there are exceptions. And here the woman is in the Hanafi madhhab, prays slightly differently from the man in a few positions. The first, for example, is, as we discussed, where does the man place his hands in the Hanafi madhhab when he is in the qiyam, when he is standing? Where does he place his hands? Can anyone remind me? Below the navel. Yes, well done. MashaAllah. For the man will place his hands below the navel in the Hanafi madhhab. However, the woman will place her hands on her chest. She will place her hands on her chest. Okay, so this is an area of difference. Obviously, what is preferable in the ruku', in the bowing, for the man to do? In the Hanafi madhhab, and I think as well, just generally in all the madhhab, I don't know of any khilaf in this area, but there might be khilaf in this area. What is preferable for the man to do? To have a straight back. The man is to straighten his back when he is going into ruku'. So I forgot to mention the 4 rak'at that are preferable to do as well before Salat al-Asr. Forgive me. So if you're taking notes, to jot that down. But the man is to straighten his back when he goes into ruku' as much as possible. Some people who are in old age or whatever, from men and our uncles and our shuyukh, it might be difficult for them. However, for the woman, she should try to cover her knees with her hands, but she is not to straighten her back. Likewise, in sujood, what is something that men are meant to do when they go into sujood with their arms? Yes? Very good, mashallah. Keep the arms off the floor. That is generally for the men. However, for the women, they are to keep their hands on the floor, by their sides. So you have your hands resting, the woman has her hands resting on the floor as she goes into sujood. Another thing... Yes.
I'm sorry, so the men don't put their elbows down, but the women do put their elbows down?
So the men will lift their elbows off the ground, you've maybe seen, right? But the woman will keep her elbows on the ground. And likewise, when the woman comes into the sitting position in the salah, her toes are not to be bent so they point towards the Qibla, but rather her feet are meant to be pointing like this way, away from the Qibla. Her toes are pointing away from the Qibla. Okay? What is the overall gist of this? What is the overall point? And we discussed this a bit last time, is what? Is that the woman prays in a way that fits her anatomy, and the woman prays in a way that most covers her. That is the overall point. The overall point here is actually these things are easier on the woman. If you think about it, you don't have to straighten your back. You don't have to lift your arms. You can rest your hands in a comfortable position. But it also adds onto the element that the woman is performing the salah in a way that covers her as much as possible, especially when she goes into particular parts of the salah. And of course, the woman's clothes anyway should be wide and covering, which will help with this bi'idhnillahi al-kareem. That is as regards the prayer of women and how does it differ to the prayer of men in the Hanafi madhhab. And we also spoke about, like I said, the Sunan and Ṣalawāt for each of the fara'id, and we talked about Salat al-Witr. Now is the...
Sorry, before you continue, you know when at the end of Salah when you're doing at-tahiyyatu, how should the feet be for men and women?
There's different ways of placing the feet for men and women. I'll put out, because it's a bit difficult to describe, I'll put out the two different descriptions, because there's two different ways that the men can put their feet, and both have legitimacy. However, for the woman, how do I describe it? She'll lean on one side and she'll put her legs towards one side. Exactly. Both her legs to one side. I sent a video, I think. I'll send it again, inshallah. It's a bit difficult to describe, but it's basically that both her legs are to one side and she leans on one side. But once again, it adds the element that she's covering herself as much as possible as well. Then we enter into another element that is very important for the special salawat, and that is the salat al-tarawih, right? Or the salat of the night in Ramadan. And in the Hanafi madhhab, this is obviously very well known. What is this? Everyone should know this. 20, yeah, exactly. It's the Ramadan number one Ramadan debate. It's one of the number one Ramadan debates, right? And why is it 20? Well, let us first establish a principle here that's very important that the Hanafis do establish as well, which is the idea that is mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam commands us to keep to his sunnah and keep to the sunnah of who? The rightly guided, the Khulafa al-Rashidun. Sunnah al-Khulafa al-Rashidun al-Mahdiyin min ba'di. The rightly guided Khulafa al-Rashidin. And who are the Khulafa al-Rashidun? The Sahaba specifically we're talking about in this case, actually the Khulafa al-Rashidun, Abu Bakr wa Umar wa Uthman wa Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. When Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and the story is that people used to pray Salat al-Tarawih in their homes, but then Umar, because there was the fear that if everyone was to pray Salat al-Tarawih all the time together at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that people might think it is wajib or is farad, like Salat al-Isha or Salat al-Maghrib. So people were commanded, or the Prophet ﷺ was narrated as praying it in his home, right? But then at the time of Umar, they said that Umar's logic was that this had now passed. There was no longer a fear that if everyone prays Salat al-Tarawih together, that people are going to think it's fard like Salat al-Fajr or Salat al-Maghrib or Salat al-Isha. Okay? For then he found that the maslaha, that the benefit was to making Salat al-Tarawih in the masajid. For when he made Salat al-Tarawih in the masajid and got people to pray it together, he made it how many rak'ahs? 20 rak'ahs. 20 rak'ahs. For this is part of following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, is following the sunnah of Abu Bakr wa Umar wa Uthman wa Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. There is no contradiction. For this is the dalil of the Hanafis, and to be honest, it is a very strong evidence. Then we enter into the topic of who is most deserving to lead the salah. Like I said, today is a lot of particular matters. We're jumping from topic to topic. For inshallah, we'll keep our concentration and leave time for the end for questions as well. For who is most deserving to lead the salah? There is a very widespread opinion that exists but it's actually not the opinion that's mentioned here. Usually when you have like people leading salah, what do you usually say? Yes,
there's a hadith to the matter that says the one that knows most of the Qur'an.
I don't know actually whether there is maybe there is a hadith, but that is generally yes.
Two main opinions, which is what I have. That one is the one who knows more Qur'an, and the other one is the one who knows more about the Fiqh Salaf.
So this is an interesting element, and I'll just take the shab at the end there.
Like if you're praying in the house, like wherever, like the owner of the house eats.
Yes, mashallah, that's true. That's a specific matter. So typically, I don't know about your cultures or your backgrounds, but the way that, for instance, I always grew up was when you're discussing who leads or whatever, especially if there's not the presence of an elder or something, it's who's the hafiz of the Qur'an, right? Who's the person who's memorized the Qur'an. And this is obviously a very good way of telling, and it's a very honorable way of telling. But actually, what is mentioned here is who is the most learned. Who is the most learned? Who is afqah? Who possesses the most knowledge of fiqh? And this is the person who prays, because you might find that some huffaz have a lot of knowledge in one area or memorize a lot, but actually they don't know how. They might make a mistake in the way that they're praying, or for example, they forget something. They don't know how to do the sajda of forgetfulness. They don't know how to do the sajda of tilawa. They don't know specific things that pertain to the salah. But actually, the person who should lead the salah is the most knowledgeable in fiqh, and then the person who's most learned in terms of memorizing of the Qur'an. It should also be then another way of determining after that is, so let's say you have two people who have the same knowledge of fiqh and the same knowledge of Qur'an, then it is who is most pious and practicing. Who is the one that you see the most in the masajid, who is the one that you see standing the night, so on and so forth. If they are the same in that, it's who is the oldest. And of course there are, for example, if you're someone's house, who is the owner of the house as well is a factor. And obviously it is disliked that someone lead salah and he is a fasiq or that this person is an open sinner and commits the major sins openly, and also as a person of bid'ah, it would be disliked to pray behind this person. Obviously there are different kinds of bid'ah. There are bid'ah that are wrong and dislikable, but you're still a Muslim, and then there are the innovations which mean that one cannot pray behind them at all, and that is, for example, like the innovation of the Shia, for example, as an example of this. There is then the issue, this is a delicate issue about what prevents someone following someone else in salah. So for example, if one is praying, there's the follower and then there's the imam, right? And the imam is on a road or a path which passes through a river. One should be able to see the imam and to reach the imam and see him. But if there is an empty land, which is the distance of about 2 rows in the salah, you can imagine like 2 rows, or there is a wall, or a great distance or a road between them, this would not be, or anything that prevents the Muslim from seeing the imam, this would usually prevent the following of the imam in the prayer. You can't pray behind him because there's this big gap between you and him, or something blocking you and him. Come back onto this later, inshallah. Soon bi'idhnillah. Also, an important point is if there's someone that's done tayammum and is leading, he can pray behind. He can pray and be the imam of someone who's done wudu. This is also mentioned in this section. But that's by the by. That's just a side note for any of you who are interested about that. The reason why I mentioned that this is a delicate issue is because today, because of a lack of space, what do we tend to do in salah as well, especially for the women, is that we'll have like 2 floors, and there'll be the imam maybe on the bottom floor or whatever. And there'll be different rooms, and you're praying in different rooms, and maybe they've got a TV screen, and maybe you'll be on a top floor and the imam is on a different floor or whatever. There's several different areas that should be considered in this regard. The first is the element that the reason for the Muslim or the person who is being led by the imam should see the imam is that he can follow him. And if we're talking about hundreds of years ago, or even in recent past, if you could not see or hear the imam, you would not be able to follow him accurately or correctly in the salah. But now with sound systems, and often, like I said, in these big masajid, they might have like a video screen of the imam or whatever, it's easy to follow him. And also there is the element here of haja or darura, which is something that we spoke about before, necessity or a need that exists, which is the element that in reality, with the lack of space and the quantity of Muslims that exist, we are kind of pressed into the position where we do not have wide masajid where everyone is on the ground floor and the imam is there and everyone can see him perfectly and hear him perfectly. It's just not in the reality that we're discussing, right? Someone might try to enter on the element that you shouldn't try to pray behind someone who is an open sinner or whatnot. But the lahya, so the beard is something that all Muslim men should grow. But in the Shafi'i madhhab, for example, it is sunnah muakkada, yani it's not even something that's fard. And it's not accurate. I mean, in many different cultures, especially if you like, for example, if you talk about my parents' generation, if we speak about that, and I think it's the same in the subcontinent as it is in the Arab world. Most people who were born in our parents' generation, they didn't have beards. This is more of a modern. This is something the young men do. If you look at our parents, our grandparents, most of them, yani, especially if they come from the cities and whatnot, they would not have beards. It's not to say that this is right or this is wrong, but it's not an accurate thing. And funnily enough, actually, just as a small anecdote, one of the most knowledgeable shuyukh I have in fiqh, right? One of the most knowledgeable shuyukh I have in fiqh, he doesn't have a beard. You'll find actually many of the Zahira, many of the shuyukh of the Azhar, especially of the past, they would not have beards. Like, it's not commenting whether they should or they shouldn't. They should. It's something that a man should do, but it doesn't enter at all into the area of knowledge or not knowledge, or area of praying behind or not praying behind. Then we talk about the salah of the traveller. This is also an area where the Hanafi madhhab is slightly different from what is widespread, and where you find, mashallah, maybe lots of people who claim to be Hanafi not exactly following the Hanafi madhhab. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا دَرَبْتُمْ أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَإِذَا دَرَبْتُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَقْصِرُوا مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ تقصروا من الصلاة آسف. If and when you travel throughout the land, there is no blame upon you for shortening your salah, right? Shortening the prayer rather. من الصلاة. So there is no problem, and this is mentioned in Surah An-Nisa very clearly, that if you are going out throughout the land, traveling for whatever reason, there is no issue for you to shorten your salah. What is interesting is, what does the ayah not mention? You're cheating though, because you've studied fiqh before, so it's la mashallah. Exactly. And this is a contentious matter, because actually the ayah does not mention. Now, if anyone's interested afterwards, we're pressed for time, but maybe afterwards we can have a discussion after class. There's a really interesting thing here about, is the salah shortened because of the safar, because of the travel, or is it shortened because of the mashaqqa, because of the difficulty in travel? Because interestingly, someone could turn around to you saying, actually today, nowadays, traveling is not that difficult. Back then, you got on your camel or you got on your horse and it's 3 days travel, and you have to bring your clothes, and now you get on, you go to the airport, you check in, you can do pre-check-in from before, you put your baggage on, you sit on a nice chair, so on and so forth. Or for example, this is a really interesting thought experiment in terms of fiqh, right? Imagine you had someone who was a multi-billionaire, he had his own private jet, he didn't have to do anything. Would that mean that he could no longer shorten his salah? No, he'd still be able to shorten his salah. Because the illah here, the reason for the hukm is the safar, is the travel, is not the mashaqqa. The mashaqqa is an explanation for one of the reasons why you're allowed to shorten, but it is not the primary reason behind, because there's a difference between the hikmah, between the wisdom and the illah. And this is now going into things about usul al-fiqh, but it's just an interesting area, because someone might turn around to you and say, travel is, one might say to you, travel is very easy today, why should we shorten our salah? And the reality is that the reason here is, yes, the difficulty of travel might be that, or the difficulty in travel might be part of the wisdom as to why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to shorten our salah, but it is not the primary reason why. Because otherwise you might turn around and say, actually, no, everyone now has to pray the full salawat, and that's not the case. Prayers to be shortened in travel, there's a difference of opinion. Some say this is actually wajib to shorten your prayers in travel. Some say it's sunnah muakkada. It's just highly recommended. However, joining the prayers in the salah is only for a need. Only if there's a hajah, there's a pressing need to do so. And that is for those who even allow it in the first place. Some do not even see its permissibility or see its permissibility. And for those who allow it, they only allow jama' ta'khir, which is basically when you have to pray dhuhr in asr's time, for example. You can't pray asr early with dhuhr. That's the jama' taqdeem. we're talking about when you join dhuhr by praying dhuhr in asr's time. For example, you pray maghrib in isha's time. And that's for those who see that this is aslan permissible, and for those who see it as aslan as permissible if there is a pressing need. Now, another condition in terms of shortening the prayer is that if your safar is shorter, you can shorten your prayer for 14 days if you do not intend residency. But if you intend to stay for 15 days or longer, then you have to pray your salawat fully. 4 rak'ahs for salat al-asr, 4 rak'ahs for salat al-dhuhr, 4 rak'ahs for salat al-isha. And this, by the way, applies to someone who acts as though they are going to be a resident of a country. So, for example, you go to a country, you put your kid into school there, you apply for a job there. All these acts are the actions of someone who's muqim, a resident in the balad, in the country, and therefore they would have to pray their prayers the full amount according to the position in the Hanafi madhhab. But that's also true, by the way, even if you were or someone who's applying for a job. So, for example, if you were to apply for a job contract, which is more than 14 days, you'd have to then pray your full prayers, because you're making the intention to stay there technically for longer than 14 days. You're acting as though you're the resident of a country.
So on the first day, from the first day, you're having to pray all of your salawat fully.
Yes.
Because you intend to stay there for more than 15 days.
Yes.
Just to make it clear, say if I'm going on holiday for 3 weeks,
Okay.
on the 15th day I will pray normally with full prayers, or if
No, from day one.
From day one.
From day
I
one.
know I'm staying for
Because
3
you know
weeks.
you're staying for 50 days.
So just
Exactly.
normal prayers.
Yeah, exactly. For more than 15 days.
And you become a musafir after what distance?
So there's a discussion about, about is it, kind of around 80 kilometers, I think is the number that's given. But generally speaking, when we're talking about musafir, it's when you've left the city is the time at which you then become a musafir. But this is an area of ijtihad, because some people put it as a number. They put, I think, is it 80 or 50? There's like a number that's used. I can't remember. 50 km. So 50 kilometers is I'll get to the question inshallah. But 50 kilometers. Some people say when you've left the country, it's an area of ijtihad. But generally speaking, I'd probably say the best is when you've left the bounds of your city, right? Yes.
So, for example, if you live in that distant area, or you are residing in different city and your parents' house in different city, because it's your parents' house, still you be considered as a musafir, or you be considered as your own house and you have to pray?
No, your parents' house, if you're living in a different house, it's no longer your house. So you'll be considered a musafir.
And same for the in-laws, yeah?
Yeah, and same for the in-laws.
And some adult in the house force you to do that, then what you going to do?
To force you to pray completely?
Yeah.
No, you should try to explain to them politely and respectfully that actually you are a musafir. Even though you feel at home with them, it feels like it's your home because you're there with maybe your mother or your father or whatever. In reality, you live in a different house. That is not your house anymore. So yeah.
Sorry,
Yes.
and just to go back to the combination, you said if there's a pressing need, so what qualifies as a pressing need?
Hajj is an area that once again will be open to ijtihad, but like for example, there'll be maybe one might say because of illness or because of a need to go somewhere or a need to do something or because there's some kind of pressure put onto you or something like this. Maybe you're in a country, let's say, where you can't pray in public or that is Islamophobic or whatever, so actually you cannot pray dhuhr, you're on a road trip, let's say, and you cannot pray dhuhr on the road there, so you have to wait until you get to somewhere that's safe and private, so then you pray it in dhuhr or asr. Especially if for our sisters or whatever, they might be in certain countries, even countries like France, let's say, where it's dangerous to wear the hijab in certain areas or whatnot. It might be that there's a feeling that I need to really pray, I shouldn't pray out in public, I should really wait until I get into my accommodation, which is in a further distance, so let me then combine it and join it with asr when I get to my accommodation. These are areas of ijtihad, so it will depend case to case, inshallah.
Yes. Okay, so you mentioned that ordering of the salah is either wajib or sunnah mu'akkada, depending on opinion.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm musafir for like 2 days, and it's not too far. Let's say it's just outside the city. If I for some reason decide that I'd rather pray the full salah because there's no difficulty on me, is that going to be sinful? Like, would you recommend against that? Because whether it's sunnah mu'akkada or wajib, then you're kind of going against the wajib or the Sunnah Mu'akkada rule of shortening salah.
Can you repeat that one more time, sorry?
So, in short, if shortening salah is wajib or Sunnah Mu'akkada, if I choose not to shorten, am I sinful?
No. They're not sinful. But the deen is yusr. And there's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that whoever makes the deen difficult, and I'm paraphrasing it, but whoever makes the deen difficult for him, it will overcome him. For take your rukhas, take your licenses for ease, generally speaking, unless there's a need not to. Sometimes, and this is a discussion once again in Usul Fiqh, between Ahl al-Azima wa Ahl al-Rukhas, or Azaim and Ahl al-Rukhas, which is the people who take by what is, the harder opinion. It's not correct, and those who take by the licenses which are afforded to them in their religion. And we'll discuss maybe that after class if you're interested, because there's a really interesting mas'ala, which is the mas'ala of, for example, you're allowed to deny your faith under threat of death. However, there is mentioned that some people, if they're strong enough, should declare their Islam even if it leads to them dying, because actually that's how you preserve the deen. So there's a differentiation between those who are allowed to take the easier opinion and those who should actually go for the harder opinion to take. Can I just get a time check on when Maghrib is, because I just want to make sure that we finish everything today. 35 minutes? Okay, we got it.
Yes. So just for clarification about combining.
Yes.
So if you're in a group and they half do, for example, you travel, they do Zohar and Asr together. What you said was that you can't pray your Zohar, your Asr at Zohar time.
Yes.
So, but if you're in a group and a Jama'ah, then what you're basically saying is you can't join the Jama'ah to do their Asr if they're bringing it forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you can't bring your Asr forward. You can only, and this is for those who view it aslan to be allowable, and you'd have to have a need. You'd have to say, because you have a need to join your prayers, you're joining your prayers because you have your need. Because the asl, asl in English is the default. The default is that you do not join your prayers in the Hanafi madhhab. But those who view it due to necessity, and if you do join them, you can't bring your Asr forward. You have to pray your Dhuhr in the Asr time.
With the other madhhab, do they bring forward the Asr?
Jama' wa taqdeem is allowed in I think the Shafi'i. Maybe it's the Shafi'i madhhab is allowed. Okay. Now we enter into the area of prayer of the one who is ill. Now this is, I want to take a second to ponder on something with some of the forthcoming sections, inshallah, which is the beauty of Islam and the importance of Salah. Because Islam so cares about the salawat that actually you pray salawat sometimes in very peculiar ways, or what would appear to be peculiar ways, because it's the obligation of salah does not drop. So obviously what you might have seen is that, for example, people who are in wheelchairs, people who are older, are respected elders, some of our shiyukh, they'll pray, for example, in their wheelchair. If they can go into ruku', they go into ruku'. If they can't go to sujood, they'll go sit down and do the sujood sitting, as opposed to in the full way. But for example, if he is not or she is not able to even sit down, you're allowed to, and there's two ways of doing this, and I think I sent a video as well to the group chat. There is a way that shows that someone can put their feet pointing towards the qibla, and then they'll try to, with their head, make a small kind of movement to indicate ruku' and a bigger movement to indicate the sujood. Or there is another opinion, which is that they go on their side and they face their chest towards the qibla, and likewise they'll try to indicate with their head slightly for the ruku' and to a greater extent with their for their sujood. Now the opinion of the Hanafi madhhab is that you are not, if you cannot even make the motion with your head at all to indicate the ruku' and the sujood, then you are not to make the movement for the ruku' and the sujood with your eyes, and the salah is delayed for you. Until you get into a state where you can. And if you can never do so, then the salah drops for you. If you're in a very bad state. However, you might be able to find different opinions, because there is maybe kalam discussion in this area. Yes.
So for example, if you got into an accident, you were paralyzed for a week, and then alhamdulillah, you were able to be cured, would you have to make up all of your salawat that week?
That's the Hanafi position. And then we go into the area which is quite important about making up missed prayers. And someone actually came up to me about this beforehand. Yes. Someone's got their hand up at the back.
Yeah, I'll
What happens when we're paralyzed in the salah time?
No, so that's the point, right? If you can't at all, it would be that you delay it until you are able. If not, the obligation drops on you. So, if you missed several salawat, you'd have to pray them back in their order. For example, you missed your fajr and your dhuhr and your asr for whatever reason. You'd have to pray them fajr, dhuhr, asr. However, the Hanafi madhhab holds that after 6 missed salawat, you can pray them in any order. So you mix 6 consecutive salawat, then you can pray them. After that point, you can pray them in any order. And the Prophet ﷺ was narrated as having said in Sahih al-Bukhari, if anyone forgets a prayer, he should pray that prayer when he remembers it. There is no expiation except to pray the same. Yani you miss asr, you have to pray asr again. And even if you missed 40 years of salawat, you have to make those 40 years back. And there's different ways to do it. It is actually very possible. For every salah that you pray for every dhuhr that you pray a dhuhr with it. For every asr that you pray an asr with it. Forget going to tarawih. That's not your priority. When people go to tarawih and do their 20 rak'ahs, you do 20 rak'ahs making up the 20 salawat that you missed during your lifetime, and you try your best. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for you, inshallah, and He knows your efforts, and He is kind, and He is merciful, and He is caring. Right?
So when you say wake up your dhuhr, you pray your dhuhr first?
Yes.
You do another dhuhr?
It's just a way of making it easy for yourself, right? So people might pray their 4 rak'ahs before their dhuhr, and they might pray as well after the dhuhr. Instead of doing your sunan, basically, just replace the sunan. It's a good way of doing it with just praying with every dhuhr, a dhuhr before it and a dhuhr after it of the ones that you missed. You see what I mean? It's just a good way of taking account of it, inshallah. Another important section is the disliked times for prayer. Are there disliked times for prayer? There's a time at which you shouldn't be praying. Can you imagine? Islam tells you that there's a time in which you shouldn't be praying. Yes, there is indeed times in which Islam tells you that you should not be praying. It is narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari that Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam prohibited us from performing 2 prayers. A prayer after the dawn prayer, yani after Fajr, until the sun has risen, and a prayer after the afternoon prayer, yani Asr, until the sun has set. Now, it is mentioned that the reason for the prohibition of this is because it is at this time that the sun worshippers would prostrate to the sun. For in the Hanafi madhhab, there are 3 times. When the sun is rising, so after Salat al-Fajr until about 15 minutes after Salat al-Fajr has finished, you should not pray. When the sun is at the zenith, so about 15 minutes before Salat al-Dhuhr comes in, you should not pray. And approximately 20 minutes before Salat al-Maghrib, you should not pray. If you think about it, these are all times when the sun is at a beautiful and very exaggerated state. The sun is just rising. The sun is at zenith. It's exactly on top of you. The sun is just before it's setting. It's come into the horizon. These are times in which people used to worship the sun. For there's a whole philosophy in Islam that exists of not being like the mushrikeen. Differentiating yourself from the mushrikeen. Pray with your shoes on outside. Do not be like the Jews. Do not wear a cross like the Christians. Do not pray at certain times at which the sun worshippers used to pray. Do not name yourselves with the names of Jahiliyyah, of the idol worshippers, so on and so forth. These commandments exist in Islam because although the Muslim should be able to exist in the society or the society that he or she lives in, and this is why the matter has to be dealt with some delicacy and precision in terms of dealing with Muslims in the West. We're not saying you reject living in the West. But what we are saying is that there's certain symbols that relate to the way and the worship of the mushrikeen, that's specific to the mushrikeen, and the Muslims should differentiate themselves from it. Now, Does that mean wearing jeans is haram because non-Muslims wear jeans? No, for example. Or wearing trainers is wrong or haram because mushrikeen or kuffar wear trainers? No, because these are things that are not specific to them or specific to their worship. However, there are things that are. So for example, I think there exists some kind of pop clothing which have like crosses on them or whatever. A Muslim should not wear that because that is specific to them and their worship. Certain practices which are specific to the worship or the ways of a disbelieving people should not be imitated. And that even comes into preventing you from praying. Subhanallah.
Yes. You mentioned about shoes. Sometimes when you do say salah outside in the field, you're travelling or you're camping or something, I see people wearing their shoes.
Yes.
So is that not allowed?
That is allowed. So the idea is that you're meant to differentiate yourself, as that comes in the hadith, from the Jews, paraphrasing the hadith, and pray with your shoes on outside. Obviously, some people who are overzealous, I don't know if you've ever come across this, but there was a movement of very zealous people, and what they used to do maybe is they'd come into the masjid with their shoes on because they want to make a point. But this is a misunderstanding of the reality. It's not that you come onto the very nice new carpets with your dirty shoes or whatever, but so when you're praying outside, there's no problem in praying in your shoes if your shoes are clean. Oh, yeah. Yes.
About the makruh time, is it also dislike to pray like nawafil?
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah, nothing. Not even sajda tilawah. I will come on to that. You're not even meant to do your sajda of tilawah in this time. Because the point is, these are the times that they worship the sun. So if you're doing sajda, it's like you're sharing with them in this act. And if someone saw you, especially back in that period, they might have thought that you were worshipping the sun. Then we enter into a very important area, which is the prostration of forgetfulness. And it's also slightly different in the Hanafi madhhab. So what is the prostration of forgetfulness? Let's say that you have forgotten something like the Fatiha when al-wajibat salah, mish min arkan salah, not from the arkan or the shurut of the salah. The arkan is like doing a rak'ah. If you missed a rak'ah and you forgot about it, your salah is not valid. But let's say that you forgot, like we said, to read al-Fatiha, okay? Or let's say that you added an extra sajda. So you did three sujuds in one rak'ah as opposed to two. You add something extra. Then, if you remember during your salah, you should then go and perform your sajda of forgetfulness. So how is the sajda of forgetfulness performed? It's performed that after the tashahhud, someone performs one salam, Assalamu alaikum, and then does two sajdas, Allahu Akbar, and does two sajdas, and then repeats the tashahhud and completes with the salat al-Ibrahimiyya, which is the durood al-Sharif, I believe is what you call it. Then gives two salams. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Tamam? Is that clear? If anyone needs me to repeat that, I can, inshallah.
Can you repeat, sorry?
Yes. So, after the tashahhud, atahiyatu lillahi wa salawat wa tayyibat, he then, after he finishes that, he goes, Assalamu alaikum. Then he does two sujuds while he's sitting. Then he gets up from his two sujuds and he then repeats atahiyatu lillahi. And he does that with Salat al-Ibrahimiyya or the Durood al-Sharif, whichever you prefer to write it down as. And then he goes, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and he finishes his salah. That's it. And the one who is led in salah must follow the imam if the imam does the sajda of forgetfulness. So you follow the imam in that. Yes.
Are you allowed to repeat initial du'as after
Yes, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, yeah.
Sorry? In the first salah, you have to do the...
Yes, yeah, you are. Yes.
Reading the tahiyyat again, is that unique to the Hanafi madhhab or is that only shared by
So I don't know about all the madhhab, but to my knowledge, this is something that's unique to the Hanafi madhhab. So for example, the Shawafi', they will do these two sajdas before the taslim. They will not do one taslim and then repeat the tashahhud and repeat the and then do the Durood al-Sharif or the Salat al-Ibrahimiyya. Yes. Can we get a time check as well? Just sorry, because we're nearly there. 15 minutes? 14? 19. Okay, alhamdulillah, we've got time. So there was a question there in the audience. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Should the Imam do it? He makes a mistake, but he doesn't realize it. He's reminded by the people that he prayed behind him after he finished the salah.
If the Imam makes a mistake that's not fundamental, then he doesn't need to he doesn't need to repeat the salah unless it's something that is like a rukn of the salah. If someone says, oh, by the way, you didn't even go into ruku', let's say in the second rak'ah, then khalas, then the Imam will have to repeat the salah. Tamam? The sajda of tilawa, the prostration of tilawa, it is wajib for all those who read an ayah prostration or hear it recited to do sujood. So this is something, once again, which is unique to the Hanafi madhhab, or is something particular to the Hanafi madhhab. I'm not saying that none of the other madhhab have it, but it's something that the Hanafi madhhab is distinct by. It's not that it's just preferable. You have to. If you hear a ayah tilawa, or you hear, for example, or you recite it, you have to then go into sujood. And it's one of the beautiful things, because it's narrated in Sahih Muslim that the Prophet ﷺ said, when the son of Adam recites a verse of prostration and he prostrates, Shaitan withdraws and he weeps and he says, woe to me, the son of Adam was commanded to prostrate and he prostrated, so he will go to paradise. I was commanded to prostrate and I refused, so I will go to hellfire. So this is something that actually should make a believer very excited to do sajda tilawa. That Shaitan, every time that you do sajda tilawa, cries out of despair. And that you have differentiated yourself, you have differed yourself from a shaitan. That you were commanded to prostrate, so you prostrated. Shaitan was commanded to prostrate, and he refused. And this is the difference between you and shaitan. So it's a very amazing thing to do. The way that it's done is that one does takbir for this sujood without raising the hands or tashahhud. Or giving salam. He just goes straight in and does the takbir and goes into the sajda. Salatul Jum'ah. Yes.
So for the sajda earlier, if I was praying, for example, next to my brother, and then in the fourth rak'ah I did one sujood instead of two, and then I went straight to tahiyyat, and then we finished the salah, and then he says you only did one sujood, I wouldn't go into sajda itself.
You only did one sajda, as opposed to two, you mean? Yes. Your salah is not valid. You'd have to repeat your salah. So now we enter into the realm of, or the topic of Friday prayer. Salatul Jum'ah. Salatul Jum'ah is one of those very unique salawat insofar that it's mentioned in the Qur'an itself. O you who believe, when you are called to the salah on the day of Jum'ah, then disperse, proceed to the remembrance of Allah and leave trade. That is better for you if only you knew. And there are many narrations about Salatul Jum'ah. From amongst them, for example, what is narrated by Imam Muslim: whoever does ghusl and then comes to Jum'ah and prays as much as Allah decrees for him, then listens attentively until the khutbah is over, then prays with him, will be forgiven for his sins between that and the next Jum'ah and 3 more days. So you do ghusl, you go to Salatul Jum'ah, you pray, you then listen to the Imam's khutbah, you pray with the Imam the Salatul Jum'ah, and then you leave, you are forgiven for 10 days, inshallah. But on the opposite side, should you miss your Salatul Jum'ah, it is narrated from the Prophet ﷺ in Sunan and Ādāb that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever missed 3 Jum'ahs out of negligence, like if you didn't have a need, you just did it because you were lazy or whatever, Allah will place a seal on his heart. Allah will place a seal on his heart. And this is actually something that I have seen in a personal story with my own 2 eyes. Someone who used to not pray Salatul Jum'ah missed it time and time again, or was not consistent with it, and they'd have these doubts or whatever. Well, subhanallah, they then became consistent with the Salatul Jum'ah, and all these things, all these questions that they used to have or whatever that I used to hear went away. For Salatul Jum'ah has barakah, has blessing in it. But of course, it's not an obligation upon women. For this is not something that women have to worry about, inshaAllah. See, who said that Islam was not good towards women? Alhamdulillah, you don't have to go to the masjid on Salatul Jum'ah. But you can if you want, inshallah. But it's a fard ayn for men. amongst the shurut, which are very interesting, and this is once again when we talk about the system that Islam puts in the world, is that initially speaking, and obviously the modern world has changed, it is not acceptable for this Salat al-Jum'ah to be done without the permission of the Imam. When I say Imam, I don't mean the Imam of the Masjid, I mean the Imam like the Caliph. And there was actually a crisis that occurred after the Caliphate was demolished at the hands of the English and the French and the enemies of Islam, that they asked, can they even do Salat al-Jum'ah anymore? Because technically it should be done in the name of the Imam. It should be done the Imam al-A'zam, the great Imam, which is the Caliph, the person who unites the Muslim world. And obviously we now do it without him, but that is not the asl. The asl is that the Caliph should inaugurate the Salat al-Jum'ah. And likewise, the Salat al-Jum'ah should not be done in a small village. The point of Salat al-Jum'ah, I mean nowadays because there's so many people, but also because we've gotten lazy with modern life and we don't take the holiday, even in this country is not in on Friday. What you'd have, and I don't know whether this is the case of all of your countries, but it's the case, for example, you might notice it when you go, like, has anyone gone on holiday? For example, let's make this a little bit more fun. Has anyone gone to Istanbul? Yeah, everyone who's Muslim in Britain maybe has gone to, almost everyone has gone to holiday and it's like gone to Turkey. You have the Jami'. Have you ever done that? They spell it with a C. Jami'. However, that's Jami'. The Jawami' are these big masajid where Salat al-Jum'ah will be performed. And the little masajid are closed. So the little masajid you can perform your 5 prayers in, but the Jawami' are the big masajid in which you pray in. And the idea is that Salat al-Jum'ah is a time to bring the ummah together. It's like Salat al-Tarawih. It's the idea that you're meant to interact with people. You're meant to see the neighbors, and you're meant to see the friends, and you're meant to see the shuyukh and the elders and the kids and whatever, because Islam wants a living community. Islam doesn't want dead individuals who are individualistic like we have in modern society today. Islam wants people to ask after each other, to interact, to check up on one another, to tell each other the news, to tell each other what's happening in different places in the city and the different places and that's happening to different parts of the community, what their troubles are, what their problems are, to tell them what the opportunities are. It wants a living community that's looking after each other, that shows care for one another, and it gives them the opportunities to do so. Salatul Tarawih has an example, but one of the best examples is Salatul Jum'ah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that we can then afterwards go to our trade. Islam is not a monastic religion. It doesn't want you to leave off the dunya totally, but it wants you to put the dunya in the service of the deen. There's no problem with seeking the dunya, but do not put the dunya in your chest, put the dunya between your hands so you can use it for the deen. Right? That's the philosophy of Islam. For the philosophy of Islam is take that time out, that hour to pray your Salat al-Jum'ah, and then go. Go throughout the land, seek the provision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make your trading, make your dealings, go to your school, go to uni, go to your office or whatever it is, but take that time out. And why is it so important to take that time out? Because if the khutbahs were treated correctly, we would have a nation of ulama. Or at least du'at, let's say. Let's not even be that romantic. Because if you think about it, you know when you go to uni, you have like one lecture, you have like 3 lectures a week, 4 lectures a week, 5 lectures a week. Salat al-Jum'ah is 1 lecture a week. For a lifetime. We're not talking about 3 years, we're talking about a lifetime. So let's say you'll be going to Salat al-Jum'ah every single week for 40 years. You should be an alim by now. But the problem is we have lazy, unfortunately, and they're not just lazy for the sake of it. It's not to blame the Imma. It's because they're not paid enough. It's because they're not given enough opportunities. But it's also sometimes they're not given they don't take the responsibility seriously, right? And that laziness that exists is a problem, because what you get is you get repeat khutbah. You get the same khutbah again and again, and it's like the khutbah. And sometimes you get even worse. I don't know whether you have this. I think it exists it used to exist in Egypt, and I don't know whether it exists, for example, in other people's home countries. But you'll get people reading the khutbahs out of a book. Have you ever seen this? It's terrible. That's not what the khutbah is meant to be. That's a book that someone reads from. It's meant to be that you see that the imam sees the problem in the community and addresses it. He's building their education. Each week he gives them a bit of fiqh, and then the next week a bit of aqeedah, and then in the next week a bit of tazkiyah, and then you find that after 40 years, everyone who's the age of 50 or 60 in the community should be a very knowledgeable individual. But if each khutbah is just a repeat of the khutbah that was last month, and you're just reading from a book and you're reading from a script, no one's going to really learn anything. For this is one of the failures for Salat al-Jum'ah in the modern age, to reach the potential and the objective. Remember, we're talking about maqasid sharia, about the objectives of sharia and the objectives of the ahkam of the sharia. This is an example of where the maqasid of the sharia are not being met in Salat al-Jum'ah, the khutbah al-Jum'ah. From the conditions is that, or from the shurut of the Jum'ah prayer, is that the khutbah is prior to it. The minimum amount of participants are 3 individuals with the imam, should not be less than that. And it is sunnah to do the 2 khutbahs with a sitting in between them. Can we get one more time check? I'm very sorry. Can someone just tell me when Salat al-Maghrib is?
And it's at 39.
It's at 39. Okay. Jazakumullah khairan. Yes, I shall read the shurut for you, but I'm just checking how much there. Okay. We can just about hack it, inshallah. Yes, of course.
If someone is say running late to get to the masjid, they miss the Fitya, is that still classed as a Jummah if they read the Jummah, but they haven't heard the khutbah?
The salah, inshallah, is still valid. The salah is still valid, but obviously, like I said, one of the major objectives of Salat al-Jum'ah has been missed, and the reward has been lost as well. Part of the reward has been lost. Because, once again, you have some people, they come, I mean, if you have a legitimate excuse, you got stuck in traffic, let's say, or there was some problem or whatever, it makes sense that you missed the khutbah. But you have some people, it's like they intend to, like, they calculate how long the khutbah is, so then to have a longer lunch break or whatever, they'll come just for the salah. It's like that's not the soul of the sharia. And this comes back to that phrase that we kept on repeating of who? Imam Malik. That someone who has knowledge of fiqh and hears that, oh, well, I can just pray my 2 rak'ahs or whatever, what happens? He becomes a fasiq, becomes an open sinner, because he treats the religion like a game that he can cheat, right? And that's not the point. The point is that actually the Jum'ah khutbah is meant to educate you. It's meant to strengthen you. It's meant to build you up. It's very sad that generally there was a beautiful class that used to be done by one of our recited here in London, and you'll know the one I'm talking about. That class on my Friday evening would have more effect on me than the khutbah, the Jum'ah khutbah. It should not be like that. And that's a very important role that the imams should take seriously. It's a great opportunity to reach out to the community and to help them. Now, Salat al-Eidain, these are the 2 Eid salahs. I'm not going to go into all the details, or maybe come into more detail about them with regards to the fiqh of siyam. We might bring it up into that section about obviously doing ghusl before Eid al-Fitr. One should eat before going out to the masjid. The takbirat are well known. People should make the takbir from the night of after Ramadan finishes, so the night of, and then do the takbirat until he prays the Salatul Eid, or she prays the Salatul Eid. It is wajib in the Hanafi madhhab to pray Salatul Eid. It is from the time that the sun rises, so after Fajr, so 15 minutes after Fajr, until Zawal, which is just before Dhuhr. And in the Hanafi madhhab, there is 1 opening takbir, and then there are 3 takbirat. This is different to obviously if you go to some other masajid where they do more, but there are 3 takbirat in the first rak'ah after the opening takbir, and there are 3 takbirat after in the second rak'ah. Yes.
Does Jum'ah and Jama'ah share the same roots linguistically?
I'm not sure, because Jum'ah is a day, so I don't know whether it's the idea because it's the day when people gather. I don't know actually. That's a very interesting question. Write it down and then I'll look into it. That's a linguistic question. Yes, go ahead.
Sunnah after Salah. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between praying at home and praying in the masjid, isn't there? No?
There's a difference between praying...
like, for example, you pray in the masjid, is it 4 rak'ah, but you pray at home, it's 2.
For Salat al-Jum'ah, you're saying?
Sunnah after.
Oh, praying it at home as opposed to praying it in the masjid. Yes, it is preferable to pray it at home, but there is this was something actually mentioned by my sheikh once. He mentioned to me that actually the imam sometimes should pray it in the masjid to make a point that people should be also praying the sunnah, because if the imam then leaves without praying his sunnah, people then go, oh well, if the imam's not praying his sunnah, and they take the impression that the imam's not praying it as opposed to he's praying it at home, they go, well, if the imam's not praying it, I'm certainly not praying it, kind of thing. So sometimes it's good to pray it in the masjid, but yes, you can pray it at home, inshallah. With regards to just if you give me 1 minute, yes, this is important. In the second rak'ah, the 3 rak'ahs are after the recitation and before the ruku' in the second rak'ah. So at the beginning, the first rak'ah, he makes the takbir, to open the salah, and then he does 3 takbirat. And in the second rak'ah, he does it after his recitation and before the ruku'. And then he does his fourth. Then he does his rak'ah he does his takbir and goes into ruku'. Then we have salat al-janazah, which is obviously the individual should be washed except if he's a shaheed, and this is from the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honors the martyr in Islam, is that their blood is pure and will come on Yawm al-Qiyamah as musk, as misk yani, as a perfume, and he does not have to be washed, but anyone else who passes away should be washed, and when they're washed they should have something that also covers their awrah. It is disliked in the Hanafi madhhab to actually read the Surah Al-Fatiha in the janazah prayer, because the janazah prayer is a place of dua. So the person opens the salah in the first rak'ah, and there's the thana, there is the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the second rak'ah, there is the salat al-Ibrahimiyya. There is sorry, not salat al-Ibrahimiyya, but in the second rak'ah there is there is salat al-Ibrahimiyya, yes. And then the third rak'ah you make dua, and then the fourth rak'ah you just do the takbir and then you give the taslim.
Just one, isn't it? To one side, is it both?
Both sides. There's maybe a difference of opinion, but what we have here is both sides. Yes. If the child is born and makes a movement or screams and then the child dies, prayer is made for it. But if it comes out and is born and it's passed away when it was born, then it is not prayed over. So there's 2 kinds of eclipse prayers, and I'll try and conclude on this. It's a narration in Sahih Bukhari that the sun eclipsed in the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it was the day in which his son Ibrahim radiallahu ta'ala anhu passed away. And so people said the sun has eclipsed because of the death of Ibrahim. For the Prophet ﷺ said the sun and the moon do not eclipse because of the death or life, yani birth of someone. When you see the eclipse, pray and invoke Allah. This is very important because I think it points to 2 things. It points to the truthfulness of the risalah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. You see, if someone was lying about their prophethood, they would want to try to make themselves see him as an elevated light as possible. Yes, the sun eclipses for me. Yes, I am wali a'udhu billah, a deity. Yes, I am different to you. Yes, I'm not even like you in terms of human form. The Prophet ﷺ was very modest. He was the best of creation, but he was very modest. He'd say that my mother used to eat dried meat. He used to say that, in this case, for example, that the sun has not eclipsed because of the death of my son. And that obviously the Risalah had come and said that he, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is a bashar, is a human being just like the rest of you. He's the best of you, but he's a human like you. Right? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The second thing it points to is the approach of Islam towards science. Now, in scientific phenomena, there is a scientific reason for something happening. You know, the orbit of the sun, the earth, and the moon, and when it coincides every particular amount of years, which means that there's going to be an eclipse. That's the scientific reasoning. But then there is a spiritual reasoning, which is just because you see a scientific reasoning should not make your heart hard. It should make you actually ponder at the might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He set these sunnah, and He set these laws and orders in the world, and how it demonstrates His might, His power, His beauty, His majesty, His control over all things. And in certain times you should take it, the ibrah, you should take the lesson that actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is conveying to you His might and power, and thus you should fear Him and you should glorify Him. So for example, when the sun is eclipsed, when there is a solar eclipse, this is kusuf, the Imam prays 2 rak'ahs with the people, and for each rak'ah there is just 1 ruku'. The amount of Qur'an that is read should be a lot. Imam Abu Hanifa says the Imam should read quietly, and Imam Abu Yusuf and Muhammad al-Shaybani say that it should be read aloud. But the correct opinion, inshallah, is the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa, that this prayer should be read quietly. After the Imam concludes the prayer, dua should be made whilst the people are sitting, facing the Qibla until the eclipse ends. However, if there is a lunar eclipse, which is khusuf, then each person should pray on their own, and there is no jama'ah. The final word maybe to be given, because I know the time has come in for Salat al-Maghrib, bi'idhnillah, is Salat al-Khawf. We're not going to go into the details of it. It's not even contained in the matan, and I've actually included, I think, some things that have not been contained in the matan, but inshallah that's okay. But it's the idea that the Muslims divide into 2 sections. one that faces the enemy and one that prays with the imam, and then they switch rows and the imam prays with the second group and finishes the salah, and the other group that's gone to face the enemy then completes their prayer on their own without the imam. What that indicates is once again this idea of how important salah is. That even when the enemy is in front of you, the obligation of salah does not drop. You still fight and then you complete your prayer, right? And it's like the salah of one who is ill. Even if you cannot stand or sit, you still pray it sitting, you still pray it lying down. For the salah is a beautiful thing, and it is an amazing thing, and it is something that we should appreciate. It is a means by which we come close to Allah. It is a means by which we can cry out to Allah with all the problems and the distresses of this dunya that might afflict us or be upon us. And it is a means by which we differentiate ourselves from shaitan and from the kuffar. It's a means by which we come close to Allah, and it is a means by which we perform that great blessing which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the Prophet ﷺ from the heavens. And with that, we have concluded our study of Fiqh Salah. Very well done to all of you, and Mabruk, that you've completed one of the most important and lengthy sections that we'll be studying bi'idhnillahi kareem. And inshallah from next session we will be entering the section of fiqh zakah bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.